Hello, everyone. Welcome to Higher Self Realities. This is Reverend Bilson. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how David prayed in the Spirit. The David here is the famous King David of Israel. In previous videos, we looked at how to pray in the Spirit. We also talked about top 3 advantages of praying in tongues. And the very last video before this one, we talked about how Hannah, the mother of Samuel in the Old Testament of the Bible, prayed in the Spirit. Today, we are going to look at David. Especially, we'll be going into a couple of passages in the Psalms. A lot of the Psalms were written by David, or at least attributed to him, but not all the Psalms are attributed to David. But we'll be looking for clues in some of the passages of the Psalms which indicate that David knew how to pray in the Spirit. He was familiar with the idea, and in fact, he did pray in the Spirit. I hope today's video will be of benefit to you, and it will assist you to better understand your own journey, especially how to tap into the power of praying in the Spirit. So let's begin. Before we get into specific scriptures in the Bible, I want us to look at the following points that can be gleaned as we look into the Psalms to consider how David prayed in the Spirit. A few times in the Psalms, we find statements that indicate that David actually called upon his soul to take over. And I want you to pay attention to calling upon one's soul. What does that mean? He also yielded to his higher self. That is a modern phrase referring to his spirit, okay? His higher expression of himself to take over his communion with God. He did that quite often. This indicates quite obviously that David was familiar with the idea or the practice of praying in the Spirit. Someone who calls upon his spirit or upon his soul to take over his interaction with divinity is already praying in the Spirit. And David isn't the only one who was familiar with praying in the Spirit. I have said in the previous videos about praying in the Spirit that a lot of people, especially Christians, think that praying in tongues is the only way to pray in the Spirit, but that is not correct at all. Before Christianity existed, thousands, if not millions of people prayed in the Spirit because people knew God and they knew God was Spirit. And the only way to truly interact with God, with the divine, was to enter the Spirit realm and allow your spirit to take over, while at the same time silencing, if not suppressing, the interference of the ego and of the human lower self. So let's now look at specific Psalms to look into how David prayed in the Spirit. The first one here is from Psalm 25, the first verse, where David says, "Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul." On the surface, this sounds very simple, but when we are looking at things from a spiritual perspective, this is a very profound statement. It's a profound prayer. David says, "To you I lift up my soul." What does lifting up one's soul mean? It simply means yielding to the power of your soul to carry you as you commune with God, as you pray in the Spirit, because that's the only way to pray in the Spirit, to let your spirit take over. Lifting up, okay, the soul means exaltation of the soul above the flesh. Okay, sometimes our flesh interferes with our prayer and it affects the effectiveness of our prayer. But when we learn to give way and yield to the Spirit, as David is indicating here in Psalm 25, what happens is that our prayer is charged with the essence of our soul, and so our deepest desire is better expressed and we are better able to manifest these desires. It becomes effortless, almost. Okay, so when he talks about, "To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul," the lifting up of my soul simultaneously lowers the interference of your flesh, the interference of human words and human language. These two things, some people think it's cute, but no matter how eloquent you are, you cannot be eloquent enough when interacting with God. Only your soul is eloquent enough and capable of transmitting divine utterances beyond just human words. So when David was saying, "To you, Lord, I lift up my soul," he knew that and understood that lifting the soul in prayer was the only way to truly have effective prayer. After all, the soul knows best. Okay, your soul knows you best, better understands your needs. Human language, no matter how perfect, is inadequate to express our heart's desire. So whenever we talk about praying in the Spirit, another way to understand this is that by praying in the Spirit, it means you are praying with the lips of your soul. You are allowing your soul to do the praying instead of trying to formulate based on human sentences the best or the most suitable expressions for your prayer. Your soul can do a much better job, and David knew it. This is coming from his Psalms. Let me ask you, how many times in your spiritual journey, in your interaction with your fellow church members, Christians, or even Muslims or other people, how often do you meet people who pray spontaneously the way David stated in Psalm 25? How many people do you know who say, "To you, God, I lift up my soul"? This thing wouldn't come easily to you unless you are truly in touch with your soul, unless it's your habit. You have a habit of praying in the Spirit and just yielding and allowing the Spirit to rise, your soul to rise and rise and rise, and to take over your communion with God. Okay, this wasn't just a line that was just great to write in the Psalms. It tells you, or it gives you a clue as to how profound David's prayer life was. You know someone's prayer life is profound or that profound when that person commands his soul to take over, when that person begins to point the attention of the prayer to his soul instead of letting his personal or human understanding of human language take over the prayer process. Let's look at the second example. In fact, this is a dual example, so we're going to look briefly at Psalms 103 verse 1 and 130 verses 5 through 6. So the first one, Psalm 103 verse 1 says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name." Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. This is a prayer of thanksgiving. It's a prayer of gratitude and praise. But why does David say, "Bless the Lord, O my soul"? It's as if there are two people, right? There is David and there is the soul. And David is saying, he is speaking in the third person, addressing the Lord. He is speaking through his soul and saying, "Bless the Lord, O my soul." He could have simply said, "Lord, I bless you." And there are instances like that in the Psalms. But this goes to show you again that David knew that there was something about allowing your soul to speak for you, which is the meaning of praying in the Spirit. God is Spirit, as Jesus said to the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4 verse 24. God is Spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit. Similarly, we can say that God is Spirit, and those who pray to him must pray in the Spirit. When you say, "Bless the Lord, O my soul," it means you are commanding your own soul, or you are rather yielding to your own soul to praise the Lord for you, because you know that your soul can express the highest and the purest form of gratitude. No amount of human words can adequately express the power of gratitude. While we are at it, refer to my video on the power of being grateful. Okay, Being grateful in a spiritual sense is not just about saying thank you. Anyone can say thank you, it's not hard. However, gratitude is more than saying thank you, and our soul is most capable of expressing gratitude to the ultimate depths. Okay, our soul is capable of doing that. Our eloquence cannot suffice to express gratitude, and that is why David says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name." David is surrendering to his soul so that his soul would give the perfect thanks to God, to divinity. There is a parallel here. You will recall from Paul's letter to the Corinthians, the first letter, chapter 14, where he talks about speaking in tongues and praying in tongues. At one point, he said that the one who speaks in tongues actually gives thanks well. In other words, those who pray in tongues give a proper and better form of thanksgiving. This is something similar to what David is expressing here when he turns away from himself and speaks to his soul and says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul." Because yes, it makes sense. The soul knows the mind of God. The soul understands what we want to do. Our soul understands our intention more than we do on a conscious level. And that is why David, who was familiar with praying in the Spirit, said what he said in Psalm 103 verse 1. In Psalm 130, he says, "I wait for the Lord. My soul doth wait, and in his word do I hope." In verse 6, he says, "My soul waiteth for the Lord, more than they that wait for the morning." More than they that wait for the morning, my soul waiteth. These are the words of someone who is familiar with how profound praying in the Spirit is. Otherwise, you can't say those words. I know that for people who are familiar with the Bible, it sounds all simple and straightforward. But these are spontaneous utterances from David, and you won't be capable of such utterances unless you are really speaking from the depths of your spirit. So he says, "My soul waits for the Lord." David knows this. He knows it, that his soul is constantly beholding the face of the Lord. That is what that sentence means. When he says, "My soul waits for the Lord," it's not waiting as if, well, God promised to do something and I'm waiting for him to do what he promised. That's not the context here. Spiritually, David is saying that my soul is always alert and attentive to the presence of God and waits upon the Lord. In other words, my soul constantly contemplates the goodness of God and the glory of God, more than they who wait even for the morning. In other words, human power, human wisdom, human knowledge cannot compare with what the soul can do within me as far as my spiritual communion with God is concerned. The soul alone can best contemplate the face of God. The soul alone can best contemplate the face of God. David understood this. That's why he says, "I wait for the Lord." Rather, my soul waits for the Lord. David had been walking and interacting with his soul. He knew his soul, and he allowed his soul to play a greater role in his spiritual life, especially in his prayer life. And we can all do the same. We can learn from David, just as we learned from Hannah, to to surrender and allow our spirit, our soul within us to play an increasingly greater role in our prayer life. Because when our soul prays, that is when we reach the height of our power. When our soul prays, that is where our power lies. So let us learn to surrender to our soul, and we won't regret it. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If today's video has been of benefit to you in any way, please consider subscribing. And if you haven't done so already, and consider also sharing this content with other people who can benefit from it. Give us a like and let us hear from you in the comment section. What's your own experience of praying in the Spirit? What have you learned from the Psalms of David? Until next time, I leave you with the blessings of God, love and light from Reverend Bilson. Bye now.